Huh? The Atari Jaguar. What a interesting system. The Jaguar was the next big step in video games, sporting 64-bit graphics that could outshine the likes of its competition, the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, and the Panasonic 3DO. During development for the system, another 32-bit system that predates it was in the works, known as the Panther, but it was dropped into its production in favor of the Jaguar getting full support. Having commercials that to this day are considered one of the weirdest, the Jaguar hit store shelves in North America in 1993 while everywhere else in 1994, unless you lived in Spain, then in 1995. On launch, the Jaguar was available in test markets around New York and San Francisco. About 20,000 consoles were available for purchase and were selling fairly quickly. This looked good for the company, so it was pretty obvious nationwide was next. Upon its discontinuation in 1996, a mere 3 years after the Jaguar's release, no more than 150,000 units were sold, which makes this system a commercial failure. You could say it was because of low third-party support. 50 games in 3 years isn't that great, but that goes in line with the fact that the Atari Jaguar was abysmal to program for. But the biggest factor, at least in my opinion, was that the Sony PlayStation and the Sega Saturn were entering the market, boasting better graphics, gameplay, sound, just everything. The Jaguar had no chance against them, even with its price cut to $149.99. Atari did try to keep it interesting with the Jaguar CD and a planned virtual reality headset, but at this point, it was really just turning into a Sega 32X or a Nintendo 64 DD scenario and failing even worse than those two ever could. But for all the Jaguar fans, luckily after Atari was bought out by Hasbro, they decided to release the Jaguar into the public domain in 2000, and although not bustling, there is a dedicated fanbase and homebrew games still being made today. The system is considered a rarity, and not many people have had the chance to play it. Time Warner did in fact license out the Jaguar architecture to some arcade games, the biggest notable one being Area 51. So, if you've played that at your local fucking laundromat or rundown mall, congrats, you have tried out an Atari Jaguar. Kind of. Not really. Still neat though. So, if you count the 50 Jaguar games, and maybe some homebrew, we have around 65 titles to look at today. Maybe more, maybe less. Lord help me. Now just know that this is my opinion, and I'm going to be pretty lenient as I'm going to look at this as a Jaguar game and not as this one-of-a-kind experience like Super Mario World or Rise Star. Ports also get a semi-buy. If it's different enough on the Jaguar, such as with Brutal Sports Football, I'll obviously be talking about the differences, but with other titles, it won't be as big of a topic if it's a port or not. If I find them enjoyable, then I'll give them a good rating. Simple as that. Equally, some games will not be talked about as much as others. If you are looking for the definitive Troy Aikman football on the Atari Jaguar review, then I'm not your guy. I'm also going to be adding a price check on each game just because I'm weird and I like that kind of stuff. And since prices for games go up and down all the time, it won't be that accurate like a month from now, but I want it to be a sort of deciding factor on if you should buy the game or not, you know. If the money's worth it, I guess. If it's cartridge, I'll be doing loose prices, and if it's anything else, it'll be complete. That's also super subjective with prices, sure, but fuck you. Make your own Jaguar review, damn it. Before we look at the Jaguar and all the things that come with it, and a little bit extra, I'm broke. I bought a lot of stuff for this video. I didn't really want to spend any more than I already have. That includes a decent camera, so enjoy the live action portion through an old Panasonic VHS camera, alright? Please don't say anything about it. When I was a kid, my family didn't have much when it came to video games. But on my 5th birthday, my brother came into my room and handed me this beautiful, beautiful piece of shit. Boom. The Dindy. The Russian equivalent to the NES and Famicom everywhere else. Spouting some of the craziest carts, this was my first taste of what would become an absolute craze for the rest of my life. I remember turning on the TV, popping the cartridge, seeing Snow Bros for the first time, and where I was from, I don't really remember seeing much else. I've heard about the Mega Drive and other consoles growing up, but nobody had them. Hell, this was just a hand-me-down from my brother. Dindy was already gone by the time I got my hands on this thing. Still though, it was easy enough to find games from time to time. So until 2008-ish, my poor ass just had this. Once I moved to the United States, that was when my whole mind expanded into different things. Super Nintendo, Genesis, TurboGrafx-16, 3DO, PlayStation, Xbox, fuck, even the CDI. All of these systems were new and exciting. World, story, gameplay, everything was different. I knew I would have to get them all. And slowly, throughout the years, I did, sort of. Never grabbed a TurboGrafx 16. I've seen them around, sure, but it's never been a right time and right place kind of thing. Why am I bringing this all up? Well, you know what I have never seen when looking for video games? An Atari Jaguar. Not once, unless it was a display piece, have I seen one of these fucking things. Yeah, you can just go on eBay and get one, sure, but I'm more of the hunt kind of guy. So it was a personal mission to find one out in the wild. So in 2021, guess what? I bought one online anyways. That's the story. I'm padding out time. So finally, let's look at this bad boy. Honestly, pretty slick. Reminds me of a spaceship. Jaguar logo on the corner. Some, vents, I guess? 64 bits, of course, although it really isn't, but hey, it's there. Get in or get out. No cartridge cover. Love dust. All in all, I'd say this is up there with the original 3DO Vaporwave design and the Amalgamation 32X Sega CD combo as one of my favorite looking systems. It has attitude, I guess. I don't know, it just looks cool to me. Onto the box, you got some Jaguar eyes, Jaguar text. Yep, it's pretty bare bones, honestly, but it gets the job done. On the back, you can see some of the great games you can find for the system. And yes, before you ask, I hate this mail sticker shit too. I was so mad about that when I first got the system. Who would slap on a fucking sticker right on the box? Well, turns out I think Atari did this. I got this note here saying that it was shipped with a Switch box. I'm not too knowledgeable about what's inside the Jaguar box originally, but I thought that was neat, so I don't hate the disgusting shipping sticker as much as I did. It's sort of like finding a receipt from 30 years ago, still inside the box, just 10 times more annoying. Don't try to change my mind. I've come to peace with this sticker. Onto the controller. The general public considers it pretty bad. In my opinion, the best word to describe the Jaguar controller is meaty. This thing's got some heft to it. The buttons feel good. The D-pad, although not my favorite, is acceptable. The number pad is standard affair for a number pad, I guess. Cord is relatively long. It's good. Personally, I would have flipped the buttons so A, B, and C would be reversed, but that's about it. This is one of those things I think people say is bad because other people say it's bad. The games themselves came in a pretty standard box, which for the time is fine. Can't tell you how much I don't like the Sega CD or Saturn long boxes, or for a closer comparison, the 32X boxes. For the Jaguar, you open the top flap, get the contents out, boom, bam, Jaguar, standard affair. For ones like the 32X, you slide the box out, then you can just grab the game. If you want the manual, however, you have to then open the top flap, dig your sweaty fingers in there and fish it out. These cardboard boxes aren't meant to handle even the lightest of touches, I feel. And once those corners start going out, it is an absolute bitch to get everything back in. The cartridges are pretty standard, besides the handle. Once again, the quality is there. This doesn't feel entirely cheap. Could probably chuck one of these across the street and it'd be fine. The handle, I guess, is for getting the game out. I don't think it really does much for me, but it does make them unique. There isn't an end label, which is annoying, and an obvious flaw for any game company at some point to have, but whatever. Some games like Doom here come with an overlay that you can then put on your controller. There's little notches that help you put them onto the number pad. Now, not all games have an overlay, but the ones that do, it's not really a make or break on if you'll know what to do in the game. It's just there for added fun, and to make your controller look neat. The material they use for these overlays are also not bad. They can take being folded to fit your number pad without feeling like they'll break. Honestly, so far, everything with the Jaguar feels great, or at least up to par for what I would expect for a game system. The Jaguar, with all of its flaws, really interests me. I can't explain it. It always had this little system that could vibe going for it, even though Atari was such a big company. Okay, doesn't make much sense, I know. Maybe it was the merchandise. It had so much I'm fucking awesome attitude. Buy this shit if you are part of the next big hit before everyone else. Let's check out the official catalog called Jaguar and check some of it out. You got the Jaguar hat, of course, the Jaguar duffel bag, can't go anywhere without that, of course, and the Jaguar water bottle, which yours truly got on deck. For me, the star of the show is this Jaguar denim jacket. God damn it, it's so cool. I've looked high and low for one, but still can't find it anywhere, of course. It's up there on the Gergak Fit chart, right with that Donkey Kong Country 2 all-over belt print shirt that I saw in a Nintendo Superpower catalog thing. Here's a shitty image I took with my phone since I can't find a picture of it online. Not exactly Jaguar branded, but Kasumi Ninja even had some merch. Included with the game was a patented Kasumi Ninja headband, which would look as stupid as you'd expect on anyone, besides me. I look stunning. Some games come with little inserts like this, the official gamer's guide to the Atari Jaguar. You can learn all the tips and tricks for great Jaguar games like Air Cars, Club Drive, Kasumi Ninja, and adult ultimate brain games. Who would even want this? It's not like many Jaguar games are long. This really does seem like a waste of money. So this fucking gamer's guide's heavy. So close to 250 pages. It's in depth for all the titles, I'll give it that. Each game gets represented well here, with page upon page of tips, tricks, and cheats. No Ultimate Brain games since that never came out. There's also interviews and a look into the future for the Jaguar. Talks of the VR headset coming around, which that also never happened. More on that later. Even though the VR headset never came to be, Atari did pump out some neat stuff like the Jaguar Team Tap and the ill-fated Jaguar CD. To go back a little bit, I'd like to think my Jaguar collection is pretty alright. I still don't have a good chunk of the library though. So I was going to use an emulator called Phoenix to play the rest. It's not bad, but some games don't look right or full stop not even work, so I decided to grab a game drive for the system. It plays everything, even prototypes that have been released, so we will also be looking at those. I guess, awesome, cool. Not like this video isn't long enough as it is. In beta for the game drive is Jaguar CD support. It's not really there just yet. Super finicky, has issues with a few games and some not even loading in, but hey, it's the Jaguar CD. Right? If you want to see a commercial failure, look no further than that thing. Only lasting around 6 months, these things vanish without anyone really noticing. Having only 11 games, with 6 being exclusive. Wait, hold on, half the library is exclusive? Yeah. Battle Morph, Blue Lightning, Highlander, Hover Strike, Iron Soldier 2, and World Tour Racing never were released on different consoles or PC. There were plans for some of them to be ported like with Highlander at a later date, but it never happened. That's pretty neat. Even then, the sales numbers for the Jaguar CD aren't fully known, but it's estimated that only 5,000 or so of these things still work, so you got a good cocktail of video game history here. An obscure add-on at the tail end of a failing game system's run in the market, half the games are still exclusive, most of them are crapping out, maybe, and it can play CDs with a sick-ass virtual lights machine? Okay, the Jaguar CD, ladies and gentlemen. We'll also be looking at this in every game that was released for this thing, maybe some homebrew, I don't know. At this point, shit, why not just find a Jaguar VR headset, honestly? Well, okay, that one actually never came out. Atari destroyed most of them back in the day, but from what I gathered, there's still at least one fully working colored Jaguar VR headset out there. So, that's a bust. Why not the next best thing? If I can't have first-hand experience, why not someone that has? This is Clint, the previous owner of the only working Jaguar VR headset. He was nice enough to just answer some general questions about the accessory. Although he doesn't have it now, what he talks about is still very interesting. We talked for a while about the Jaguar in general. He gave me some ideas on how to semi-have an experience like the Jaguar VR, like with the Dino Visor. But either way, here's the questions I asked him in full. Question 1. Compared to other virtual reality of the time, if you have tried those out to any extent, where would you say the Jaguar VR sets quality-wise? Although a prototype from the videos I've seen, it looks pretty finalized. The only other VR headset I had used was one of the actual virtuality arcade machines a few times in the 90s at the mall arcade. Comparing a 45,000 plus commercial grade setup to a consumer based prototype that was supposed to sell for $299 seems a little unfair, but for the time, and even to this day, put in perspective, it was amazing. Atari was selling the dream of being able to play these crazy futuristic titles at home, networked with voice communication using the JAG modem with friends across the phone line, and for an affordable price. It doesn't really get any cooler than that for a teenager of the 90s who liked movies like Ghost in the Machine, Lawnmower Man, etc. While I did play the Virtual Boy kiosk for a few hours, I would never classify it as VR. The Virtual Boy is an absolute joke compared to Atari/Virtuality's actual VR headset with color LCD and true head tracking. You would think the IR sensors, 6 in each eye dome if I recall correctly, would work so well, but it did an amazing job at tracking your head movement. The guys at Virtuality were geniuses with their design. I think most people complain that the Jag VR wasn't stereoscopic, but really, they were expecting too much from a $300 VR unit in the 90s to begin with. Question 2. As with virtual reality, even now, motion sickness has always been an issue. Did you experience that with the Jaguar VR? I don't remember having any issues with motion sickness using the Jaguar VR while playing Missile Command in VR mode. I think after playing an hour or so of Jag Doom, it made you feel kind of nauseous, but that probably had more to do with the movement within the headset while not actually moving your head since it didn't have tracking for that game. With more recent headsets, the mobile VR units made me very nauseous. I never had a problem with the Sony PSVR or Oculus Rift, however, with the exception of the roller coaster game on the second version of the Rift S. And for the record, the only game ever to make me physically sick was Killing Time on the 3DO, and it wasn't even in VR, it was just that choppy. Question 3. I couldn't find much when it came to how it all hooked up. I've seen people say that you could just plug it in and go. Connecting the unit is relatively simple. You would connect an AV cable from the Jaguar to the IR transmitter, and there was a pass-through AV port on the transmitter that allowed you to use the Jaguar's AV cables to then connect to a TV. Power supply connected to the transmitter would power the transmitter and the Jaguar VR headset, which was connected to the front middle port. Then the transmitter's left port would connect to the Jaguar's second controller port, where it would send all the XY coordinate information from the headset that allowed for tracking. There was a third port on the front of the transmitter intended to daisy chain yet another transmitter for the VR space gun or controller, but as far as I know, it wasn't fully developed. I had a PCB mock-up of the unit, but I don't remember if I had a complete transmitter for the space gun or not. The space joystick I had was only a prototype mock-up with no working electronics, unfortunately. Anyways, once connected, the commercial release version of Missile Command 3D would detect that the transmitter was connected and allow for a use headset under the controller options menu. When a headset is not connected, it will default looking at the floor, but if you plug a second joypad controller into the beta version of Missile Command 3D with the headset feature unlocked, you can see it bounce around a little when you press a few numbers on the keypad. The way that Virtuality programmed the sensors to stream data to the second controller port without the need for an ADC chip from the earlier Jaguar units is something to marvel. Question 4. Any personal notes about the Jaguar VR as someone who's personally got to mess around with one? The Jaguar VR truly was ahead of its time, and while it would have come a little too late to really save the Jaguar, it certainly would have provided an affordable virtual reality experience for the masses at home in the 90s that was quite impressively effective that I'm sure most kids would have enjoyed. If you place a Jaguar VR next to the Virtual Boy, for example, you would walk away wanting the Jaguar VR every time. Missile Command in VR mode also shows just how fast the Jaguar is at moving the display around with the right programmer. It really zips around the screen and only jitters some due to fingerprint smudges on the front of the IR domes and their transmitter itself. I'm guessing maintenance or upkeep on the headsets would have been a chore at some point since kids have a hard time taking good care of their toys. Then again, it was still in prototype form, and for what it was, is an amazing piece of technology with clever programming to make it all work far better than ever expected. I stand by Virtuality never gaining the recognition they rightfully deserved. As far as I can tell, Atari only ever paid them $50,000 to start on development for the headset, but I can imagine it exceeded far more than that. I was told by some Virtuality guys that Atari never paid them and were rightfully very upset as a result. Supposedly that hurt Virtuality to the point where they had to split up the group into multiple divisions. I can't remember now if they went bankrupt as a result, but really, if that caused them to go bankrupt, then clearly they had serious issues elsewhere. Of all the gimmicky devices or add-ons released during the 80s and 90s, like the Enforcer, Power Glove, and even Virtual Boy, this one actually worked and it was fun. The downside being the LCD display on the initial unit was less than optimal, but for the price point, nothing else compared. The blue version, which I had, was heavier, but the image quality is what you would have expected in the end. They really needed to figure out how to keep it mounted to your head with a better top strap as well instead of just vicing it to your face. Also keep in mind that the VR games were intended to be played in 20-30 minute intervals at most, so in regards to your motion sickness question above, it would have or should have been kept to a minimum. Also, the unit did have a mic port for voice communications, but they hadn't included any circuitry for that part yet. I think it was still on the fence since the Jag voice modem would have included the headset to talk to other players anyway, making the mic in the VR headset redundant while increasing price, weight, etc. Since you enjoy the VLM, it's also my favorite part of the Jaguar CD, you may find it interesting that Jeff Minter had considered making a VLM VR mode. Sadly, that never happened, of course, since it was canned, but I did spend several hours listening to music with the headset strapped on and watching the VLM patterns endlessly bounce around to the music. I remember lying down on the futon we had at the time, and my mom walked in on me thinking I was dead because I wasn't moving. Surely every parent's worst nightmare, to walk in and find that their child had actually died in virtual reality. Anyways, I have a million stories and far more information to ramble on endlessly about, but that should help answer your questions some. P.S. I just bought another Dino Visor thanks to you. The thing to remember is that they use the earlier version of the headset internals from the Jaguar VR, less the tracking sadly. So if you want to see why Atari rejected it, supposedly, though I still gather it had more to do with Jack Tramiel killing the project after Sam had his heart attack, then look no further than the Dino Visor. It doesn't have the better LCD internals though that the later blue prototype VR headset had, again at the cost of being too heavy really in the end. Why Virtuality never pushed to take the tracker setup and move it to another platform or PC, I'll never understand other than bad timing and not having the financing to do it. Thank you for the answers, Clint. What a stand-up guy. Honestly, I popped up out of nowhere, commented on one of his YouTube videos from years ago, and in a day or two he gave me more information than I would have ever expected. God damn him though, now I'm gonna have to get a Dino Visor one day. I asked him if he would like to plug anything and he gave me a Discord link to the Jaguar chat group and the Jag Studio for anyone that wants to try their hands at making games for the Jaguar. I'll leave both down in the description below. Also, his YouTube channel, even though he didn't ask me to, he's too cool of a guy not to. After all of this, now we can play some Jaguar. Once again, just want to reiterate for everybody, some reviews of games will be shorter than others. Not everything is going to be paragraphs long, you know, Troy Aikman football is going to be maybe 2 sentences, get ready for that. One more time, I'm serious, every game on the Jaguar CD, prototypes, and homebrew, let's get to it. Air Cars. Air Cars is a shooter game where the main goal is to destroy certain buildings and objects so you can progress to the next level. There are different power-ups that you can choose from to help you along the way, and even different ways to control your car, which is a novelty for the time. You'll see turrets, tanks, and other air cars try to hinder your way, but after that, there's not much else to it. The controls are a bit floaty, and your bullets almost always seem to miss their mark. There is no music in-game, so all you get to listen to is some stock car sounds and miscellaneous effects. But after you get the hang of it, it's really not the worst thing out there. Definitely not the worst on the Jaguar by far. There was easily some work put into the game, more so than other titles later on in the video. But still, it's not something that I would consider a hidden gem on the system. Other notable point is that there is options for you to use the Jag Link and connect to other Jaguars to play multiplayer games, which is pretty much the same game but with more people. This was one of the last games released for the Jaguar, which in turn makes it one of the more expensive titles. The game was received negatively before release, which in turn hindered it for a few years, ultimately leading to a limited run of 300 copies in 1997. There were 2 other versions released later, Air Cars 94 and K8 Air Cars, with the first being a prototype and only having a few copies made for fans, and K8 Air Cars had a vigorous release of around 100 copies. Personal opinions on this, it's fine. I can't say there's anything about the game I dislike, but there's not much I like either. Maybe if I ever get a Jag Link and find some friends with Jaguars in this game, then maybe one day I'll play it again. Alien vs Predator. Now this was the game that got people talking about the Jaguar. It's considered one of the best for its gameplay and visual style. I don't like it that much. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game, but I'm just not a fan of the style. You have 3 classes to choose from, the Xenomorph, the Predator, and the Marine. The Marines are the main shooters, typical Doom style I guess. The Predator is more stealth-based, finding the best time to strike then showing yourself to your opponent to build up honor to get better weapons. And the Xenomorph, which is the best one in my opinion, is a speed type character in which you can infect and cocoon other people, so when you die, you can respawn since your health is the lowest of the 3 playable characters, which I think is a really cool mechanic. Just sucks that I'm absolute dog shit at these kinds of games. Respect for it being something amazing for the time, but for me, I just can't enjoy it as much as others. The frame rate is a big drawback, long quarters of nothing just flailing about till I find one notable thing, rinse and repeat. There is a semi-fan remake in Unreal Engine that gets rid of my minimal complaints, but it's not finished. Still interesting to see though. Personal reasons aside, it is about $50, yeah, which is around the norm for the great Jaguar games, besides some outliers. Worth the price as a collector's piece for sure, and has a following, so if you're into this kind of thing, go for it, why not? Atari Karts. Atari's answer to Super Mario Kart. Atari Karts obviously takes a lot of liberties from the popular Plumber Racer on the Super Nintendo. That in turn doesn't make this a bad game, but it has a lot lacking for it to actually be considered an underappreciated title. The controls are very stiff, no drifting in sight, and if you keep going one direction, you'll peel out, so that's pretty annoying. Other racers seem to weigh marginally more than you. One tap from them will push you off the track while they are left unscathed. Sometimes this can be a good thing, as they can just fucking launch you into first place, but more often than not, they will hit you off course. The hit detection on walls can be a bit cumbersome sometimes, even getting you stuck to the point of not being able to move. All in all, even with these complaints, I did actually finish the game. I enjoyed it for what it is. I don't think it's anywhere near Mario Kart levels of fun, but it was an enjoyable experience. You can find pickups on the ground like the white wheel, which lets you keep your speed out of bounds, which helps do quick shortcuts across the track, the big wheel, which gets rid of the peel out problem like I said earlier, and the rabbit, which lets you go faster than your usual top speed. Other than those, there are some hindering items which can reverse your controls and slow you down. The selection of characters are pretty meek. One Atari rep is present here, which is Bentley Bear from Crystal Castles. The rest are original in design. Personally, I think Ptarmigan is the coolest fucker around, which sucks since he's actually the worst character in the game. As you progress through the cups, you will unlock 4 new characters: Haratari, Firebug, Miracle Man, and Pumpkin, which is now my new favorite character. Sorry Ptarmigan fans, kick me out of the fan club. This game really hits me weird. On one hand, I really like it. The way the road morphs with you on slopes is so unique, and it's definitely something the Jaguar is known for when it came to sprite scaling. The backgrounds are great, the tracks are adequate, the music sounds like I'm pirating Fallout 3 in 2011 from Skid Row or some shit. It has merit as a pretty decent game. On the other hand, the controls are shit. The AI can be unforgiving, and at some points you can't just play your favorite character, you gotta go big or go home. The collision can be absolutely shitty and cause you to want to reset the game and make you stop playing for a bit. All in all, it's a mixed bag. I think this is a good example on that no words can do it justice. You're gonna have to try it out on your own. Which also sucks since this game is around $250? Attack of the Mutant Penguins. This game is pretty infamous for being super weird. You have to stop these mutant penguins from entering this machine thing. You pick up little Furby looking animals that help you unlock chests to spell out your weapon's name. They can also in later levels help you with making tools that can either kill or stop the penguins from entering said machine mouth thing. The more you have the little Furbies, the faster they are with opening and making stuff for you. There's a set number of mutant penguins that you have to stop before the level ends, so it's kind of like a tower defense type of game. It's actually a lot of fun, even with my not so good explanation of what to do. After each stage, you get a choice of 2 minigames, a Duck Hunt-esque minigame and a Space Invader minigame. If you rack enough points or finish one of these 2, they reward you with actual penguins that will help you in the next stage. The control scheme is pretty good. Everything makes sense and there's not a full-on what button does what scenario like with a few Jaguar titles. Both characters have their own unique set of moves and power-ups. The only gripe I could say is that the mutant penguins can sometimes be faster than you with reaching their end destination. You do have a lot of grinding that needs to be done before you can start beating the fuck out of them. Once again, no music too. I'm a big fan of music in video games, so I just don't know why there's not just some bloops and bleeps to keep me entertained. Instead I have to hear this machine head moan in my ear for hours. The little Furbies can also start juking you in later stages, and with the added effect of slowdown when there's too much on the screen, it starts becoming a bit of a chore, but that's a small portion of the game. It's not as prevalent as I'm making it out to be. I'm glad this game is looked at fondly. It's a good sit down and play for an hour or 2 type of experience. I love pick up and play styles, and this hits that itch from time to time. Breakout 2000. The first in the line of 2000 games for the Jaguar, Breakout 2000 is a revamped, remastered version of the classic Atari title. That's about it. You can flip between classic and breakout mode, but the game itself has nothing much else to bring to the table. In fact, the perspective on the new styles feels a bit janky at times. The paddle speeds can be adjusted, but not one of them feels right like the original. The music is a bit boring, and the sound effects get tiring quick. I know they were trying to go for a, "aw yeah, that sound effect is so gratifying" feel, but it fails in that and becomes repetitive. You can tell they really like that effect too, as they play it for all the bricks being placed at the start of the level. Aw yeah, that doesn't sound good at all, Atari, Jesus. Now it does have 2-player mode with the ball going top to bottom for each player, but I have no friends so I couldn't really show it. That's about it, man. It sucks that I couldn't give it more of a positive look. I don't know if it was just how I was playing or something, but in the classic mode, you only get 2 stages, and that's it. What the fuck, am I stupid? Did I do something wrong? Either way, that's it for Breakout 2000, a boring game that doesn't give me any reason to return to it. Brutal sports football. Just like with first-person shooter type games, I'm not a big fan of sports titles, but I gotta say, Brutal Sports Football was a pleasant surprise. It's pretty much like Super Tecmo Bowl on NES, but dumbed down, and now you're able to pick up weapons and kill each other. Like literally behead each other and throw said skulls at your opponents. And it's not just a cosmetic thing either. They stay dead for the entire game, and if you're playing in championship mode, they stay dead for the entire run. You can whittle down your opponent's team so it's easier to score points, or just kill them all and you win. The control scheme is adequate, it's about what you'd expect. Punt, throw, and tackle your opponents, it's just a good fucking game. Power-ups are also on the field once again, rabbits and turtles to make you faster or slower. Different weapons from swords to shields to bombs even. I got my friend to play this with me recently, and before he didn't entirely like the Jaguar, and now they're slowly converting. That's the power that this game has. One big note is there is a bit of slowdown sometimes, but it's not like it's unplayable. Now the Jaguar version, if I'm correct, hasn't been ported since, but there is the DOS version that is on Steam, so you can just play the game. But if you do want to buy the Jaguar version, you're also in luck, as it is one of the more cheaper titles on the system. At about 25 bucks, that's a price that can't be beat. Good game, great price, first time so far we got an almost perfect game. Hopefully it's not the last. Bubsy Fractured Furry Tales. Now if you're new to my channel, I gotta admit something to you. I fucking love Bubsy. I love most of the games. So when I first got my Jaguar, I had to grab this title. I played everything else. This was the final piece to my Bubsy collection, besides the Game Boy games, but fuck those. So I bought it. Super excited, I popped it in, and it's fucking one of the worst platformers I've ever played. Instead of the linear gameplay that the original Bubsy is known for with some different paths, this one takes a find the switch style of approach. But it's kinda weird. You don't know where to go most of the time, you don't even get a chance to find out how many of said switches you gotta find in each level. You just run around and maybe, just maybe, you'll see one. While looking around, the enemies can come out of nowhere, and it's not the idea of, oh, okay, I can react to this. They just pop out of existence, and since a lot of them, especially the fucking hornets, are so quick to cling onto you, losing 9 lives can happen in less than 5 minutes. As someone who plays a lot of Bubsy, one of the biggest things is your glide. Even in the original, enemies do pop up out of nowhere, but you know you won't see them attack upwards. If they did, the game would have a lot more cheap deaths than it already has. In Bubsy on the Jaguar, a lot of enemies have an upward style of attack. Some fly at you too fast to react or hit, some throw shit at you the minute they pop up on the screen. There's literally an enemy right at the beginning of the stage that shoots these fucking balloons upwards, which would be fine if you could at least pop them or glide on them or something, but no. They're an instant death. You wanna know how they really cared about this game? When Bubsy goes up an incline, his sprite looks all fucked up. Look at this just isn't right. Bubsy's iconic exclamation point on his shirt is yellow instead of red, which actually is just a programming error. Apparently, after Bubsy 1, nobody gave a shit, and every person who made a Bubsy game since would just have Bubsy dolls hung around their office like a torture room. God damn it. The one thing I think this game had that was interesting is that once you defeat an enemy and lose a life later in the stage, the enemy doesn't respawn afterwards, which is not a bad way to do things considering how you have to explore so much for each level. But that's it. It's fucking ass. I usually have more nice thing to say about any game, but this one just left a bad taste in my mouth. I wouldn't recommend it. Go play Bubsy 3D. It's even better than this. Cannon Fodder. Cannon Fodder is on fucking everything, man. From 3DO to PC to SNES to the Game Boy Color, it's nothing special when it comes to the Jaguar version. You control a small squad of soldiers and have to destroy enemies or bases along a specific map. Once they are all destroyed, you beat the level. The way you control your soldiers is with a mouse icon. This helps you direct them and where to shoot. Honestly, it's a fine game. I don't have any issues with it. It's just, you know, Cannon Fodder. It's also like the most expensive Cannon Fodder title, right, with the 3DO version at around $35. Personally I wouldn't, but for all of you in the Cannon Fodder fan club, this one's a must-have. Checkered Flag, a racing simulation game that has one of the weirdest feeling steering I've ever played. The tracks are fine, the actual look of the game is pretty good for 1994, and the music, although not great, it's at least not grating to my ears. You have a lot of freedom when it comes to setting up race, from lap count to time to your car's color. Now, going to the controls, it's hard to explain. The turns are very sharp, but it's not instant. There's a little bit of a delay, so it never feels gradual. There's about a half second between you pressing the button, the car slowly turning, then just balls to the wall, straight fucking 90-degree angles. It's a bit jarring at first and makes the game seem unplayable. After a bit though, it doesn't feel as much of an issue. Luckily, if you do crash, it's fairly quick getting back into the race. Even if you crash away from the road, you just teleport back. So it's not entirely bad, just different. Those differences though are a big outlier, and if I would ever want to play this again, the answer to that, probably not. Club Drive. Now, from what I know about this game, it's been heavily panned for being just a glorified tech demo, and a bad one at that. And I agree, there's nothing about this game that's good, and that's what makes it a lot of fun today. You have a few options for gameplay, a collectathon, and racing with an option of 1 to 2 players. Each version of the maps are different depending on the choice of gameplay. You have a house, San Francisco, a skate park, and an old western style map. Each stage looks pretty bad, but for some reason it has a certain shitty charm that I like a lot. The fact that each map has 2 different layouts depending on what style of game you're playing makes the replayability at least not zero. The graphics, I mean, for the time, it's okay. You know, I don't like doing comparisons that often, but this is a good one. Club Drive came out in the same year as the goated Sega Rally Championship, but I don't entirely see Club Drive as a racing game, more just a fuck around kind of thing. I mean, look at this fucking cat, come on, it's charming in a bad way. There are also specific codes you can do to get some debug stuff in their test stage, which is super neat. There's little secrets scattered around in some of the maps, like a hidden castle and a dinosaur, so they added just some cute things here and there. I like that. Some of the bad. The controls are a bit miffed. Everything feels pretty stiff. You have loads of options for camera angles, but nothing feels comfortable to play on. You do have a reverse button, which is nice, but why? Pretty much just saying, hey, we didn't test for issues, so here's an undo button. Even though there is a 2-player mode, it's almost unplayable. Everything runs at PowerPoint levels of speed. Club Drive's not great, but that's why I love it. It's definitely a point and laugh at kind of experience, but those are always better than something that's just outright boring to play. Cybermorph. The launch title for the Jaguar, Cybermorph was also bundled with the system. It's a free-roam collectathon shooter with some pretty decent graphics for a home console in 1993. You collect these things called pods, and once you reach a certain number, a portal is open to progress to the next world, with 9 worlds in each stage. It's pretty tedious after a bit, but for a launch title, there could be a lot worse. Looking at you, 3DO. One of the few gripes I have with the game is the controls feel a bit stunted at times. You can't shoot where you want because the way your spaceship is controlled is just super slippery. Now, a certain video game nerd, not gonna say any names, will say that the AI Skylar just talks way too fucking much to the point of annoyance, but honestly, it wasn't as bad as I expected. It does happen, but not to the degree that was shown. It does get pretty dull after the first few worlds. Half the gameplay is just me looking at the mini-map, finding pods, and that's it really. I know there's more worlds to explore, but I didn't want to do any more. I personally don't think this game should get a lot of the heckling it has nowadays, and most of the time, the people who do shit on this game, or any game on the Jaguar, actually haven't played them and heard it from someone else. I think it's fine for the time, and if you are collecting for Jaguar and don't have this one specifically from everything else on this list, it's definitely something that should be in your collection. Defender 2000. Another game in the 2000 line, Defender 2000 is a good way to showcase how a revamped game should be. Fast gameplay, great music, tight controls, it's really one of the best games on the Jaguar. It's honestly kind of weird how much people talk about Tempest 2000 when this one has equally great music and visual appeal. Some things to note is that you can go a bit too fast at points, which in turn makes it impossible to react to anything even with the mini-map on the top. The enemies can just spawn in at points on top of you and make you lose a life, which is a bit bullshit considering you can see them on the map before they even appear. But all in all, it's fucking great. Take a listen to this music, seriously. As with Breakout 2000, you have the option to play the original game, and as an added bonus, there is Defender Plus as well. Cute Jaguar cheat codes alert, you can input a secret code to get a 4th game, Pong. Okay, sure. As for the other 2 Defender titles included, I don't like the original Defender that much, and Defender Plus is sex. It plays well. Fuck. Doom. Okay, for real. I only played Doom on this really shitty computer when I was a kid, and it hated the game and caused it to crash multiple times, and since then, it sort of gave me this off-putting opinion on the original. So bias aside, from what I looked up, this is a pretty damn good port. Frame rate, controls, looks, fucking Doom, man. I don't know anything about it. From what I played, it felt fine, didn't hate anything. Well, besides that there's no music except on the intro and when you finish a stage. Kinda weird they didn't add any, but whatever, silent Doom. It even has 2-player deathmatch if you hooked up 2 Jaguars, so shit, not bad. Now obviously today this isn't much so something you would look to get, as there are way better versions of Doom out there, but for a good Jaguar game, that's more for you to decide. Intense shrugging on this one for me, but for those Doom fans, this is acceptable, way better than other ports for the time. Double Dragon 5. I looked up this game a bit since I've never played it. People were saying it was at least semi-competent, which, you know, isn't true at all. They panned the Jaguar version especially because it didn't look that much better than the version on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, which I can agree, they all kinda look like ass to begin with. The CPU is pretty unfair, frame perfect blocking from them, so I had to go into big brain cheese mode and win like that. At a certain point, when you look at gameplay, if this looks fun, where the CPU can't even figure this out but can do frame perfect blocks, okay, sure, this game's for you then. Not that great, I'd say this is probably the worst fighting game on the Jaguar. It's still okay, like, it's not Rise of the Robots or Shadow War of Succession, but definitely something that I won't be touching again. Dragon, the Bruce Lee Story. The game based on the movie but was released a year fucking later for some reason on the Jaguar. I kinda like it actually. It's sort of like a more fleshed out Karate Champ on the NES. Weird quirky reference aside, I played this game, or well, attempted to on the Super Nintendo, and it was fucking hard as shit. So coming into the Jaguar version, I instantly put it on the easiest setting and still got my ass kicked. The enemies just have better chances at hitting you, or I'm just bad. Probably the latter. Nothing like Double Dragon 5, mind you, I at least got a few stages in with my skill level. Literally on the second stage, they pit you against 2 enemies instead of just 1. But with the control scheme that you have, it feels like a 1-to-1 fighting game. Man, it's something. I hate it, but gradually I came to enjoy this game for what it was. The sprites are great, everything looks about up to par with Super Nintendo, if not just a tinge better. The Jaguar obviously could bust out some better stuff, but for a port, yeah, it's alright. Evolution Dino Dudes, or more commonly known as The Humans, is a platform puzzler sort of like Lemmings, I guess? You control a limited amount of cavemen and solve puzzles to get to certain areas on the map. The numbers on the Jaguar controller will let you select which caveman to pick. As you progress through the levels, you pick up different items such as the spear. The only thing to note that makes this game a little annoying is that some jumps can be super exact, like to the pixel. I honestly didn't play enough of this game to fully get a decent idea of everything it had to offer, but from the little I played, it wasn't anything bad. Just super lame, I guess. I don't want anyone seeing me play Evolution Dino Dudes. All jokes aside, it's alright. Fever Pitch Soccer. Like I said before, sports games are not my cup of tea. I really only like a few, and most of them are different titles from Tony Hawk Pro Skater or Skate. So take my opinions on football and basketball games or any games like that with a grain of salt. Fever Pitch Soccer was fun, at least for the time I played it. Everything seemed about what you would honestly expect from an early to mid 90s football game. The cutscenes are fucking awful though. You have all the places you'd want for your team or whatever. I'm sorry, it's a fine game, I just don't like this kind of stuff. Fight for Life, another knockoff title, this time taking inspiration from games like Virtua Fighter. Fight for Life was one of the last titles for the system being released in 1996, and as Dave Halverson from GameFan said, what an appropriate send-off for the Jag, a terrible system's terrible last hurrah. Which, I mean, yeah, it's fucking awful, but man, is it not just kind of neat? A small step back into the past? Here's a reason for Dave's review. Atari, being just Atari, sent out preview copies of this game for review with some gaming magazines, Game Fan being one of them. But someone really messed up and mislabeled the prototype Fight for Life cartridge as the final build, which just destroyed the game when it came to its score. Ironically though, the final version fucking wasn't that much better. Set after the year 1995 in the Spectre Zone, which is like Purgatory, the overseer known as the Gatekeeper unleashes a fighting tournament for all the dead fighters who died the previous year in 1995. Whoever wins gets a second chance at life, a fight for life, if you will. God, kill me, please just take me. You get a decent selection of characters such as Kimura, Ian, Kara, Puggers. Once you actually get into the game, it's pretty sluggish. Starting out, most moves do little to no damage, but as you defeat certain enemies, you can steal 2 of their signature moves to power yourself up, which is a really cool idea. Just sucks the implementation didn't work well at all. I've tried using these stolen moves, but they never seemed to work. Instead, I stuck with the classic Pog Punch, as I like to call it. It's your run-of-the-mill classic 90s fighting game where the input delay is so heavy that it won't register for like half a second for you to land your moves. Besides the rare few like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and my boy Killer Instinct, most fighting games kinda felt like this. Even with Fight for Life trying to take some of that Virtua Fighter pie, it fails in almost every aspect of what made that series fun to begin with. You can tell that this game had some potential, especially considering that the 3D really isn't that bad, but by the time this came out, it was already dated. Being the last game published by Atari exclusively for the Jaguar, it's just a really lame way to go out. Dave from Game Fan was right. Gotta say, I love the intro though. Flashback. Okay, I'm gonna cut this one pretty short, as this game has been ported to just a large handful of other consoles, even nowadays on the Switch and PS4. It's just Flashback. There's nothing different about it besides some music, I think. If you had the choice, I'd say play it on something else. If you're a big Flashback fan, maybe, sure, whatever. I'm sorry. I hope I don't get anyone saying, why are you even doing this? Why are you even reviewing every Jaguar game? Fuck you, bitch. Flashback for life. Fuck you. Or whatever. Flip Out. Flip Out, baby. This is the only puzzle game on the Jaguar. I'm not joking, not even Tetris got on here. Flip Out consists of multiple different puzzles, from matching tiles to matching guys on bidets to Mount Rushmore face swap. Game's weird, man. There's an entire stage called Cheese World. So quirky. Fawn and Z would love this game. Is that a dated reference? Probably, sorry. It's proper enough, honestly. I can't say that it's bad or anything like that. I really sort of blanked out playing this, but I beat it, so that should mean something. While trying to solve puzzles, these little fuckers will run on top of your field and stop a certain piece from being moved for a specific amount of time. It's stupid annoying, but whatever. A small complaint. It's an okay game. Cool Jaguar cheat codes. There's a hidden cheat code where if you input it during a stage where there are cheerleaders in the back, you can change them to the developers. Isn't that cute? They were proud of this. Hover Strike. Within the lines of the 2000 series such as Breakout and Defender, Hover Strike was going to be in the same category with the classic Battlezone. Aptly named Battlezone 2000, sooner or later it was getting too different compared to the original, so they just changed it to Hover Strike. Name change aside, it's your generic shooter. You go around doing certain objectives, rinse and repeat, sort of like Air Cars but with an abysmal frame rate. For being one of the first games greenlit for the Jaguar, I'd say it's a lot more impressive compared to the original lineup. The graphics aren't the worst, you can tell where you are going, and the draw distance, although noticeable, isn't as much of a deterrent as, let's say, Cybermorph. You do have the option to change your perspective, which is a nice touch, but in turn lowers the already low frame rate. It's competent as a shooter even with that big flaw, but there still isn't much going for it after that. You do have a 2-player mode, and instead of 2 people actually playing split screen style, 1 person drives while the other shoots. Like with most Jaguar games, this one's okay. You can tell that there's issues of course, but it's nothing that a little acceptance can't fix. iWar, another shooter. iWar is based 20 years into the future, which, if we go by the release date 1995, would be 2015. Oh my god. You collect pods to progress through each level, dodging and defeating enemies. There's some power-ups and health items here and there, with even some minor platforming, but all in all, it's pretty cut and paste. The style of this game with the blocky early 90s polygon screams Jaguar, of course. I actually like the environments and the little obstacles you can go through to pick up more pods. After each stage, you can go into a little mini-game, where if you collect a certain amount of pods, you can earn an extra life. One nice thing is when you die, you respawn where it happened with a bit of invincibility for a short while. Usually with these kinds of games, you just respawn at some checkpoint system, so it's a bit different. The music's pretty good, which was made by Alistair Lindsay, who made other great soundtracks for games like Dog's Life on PS2, and other great Jaguar games coming up soon. It was pretty mixed upon release, but I actually enjoyed it. It has enough substance to be a fun game for at least a little bit. Easily a hidden gem on the Jaguar. International Sensible Soccer. One more time, folks, I am not a fan of sports games. I know of this series, it's considered one of the best football games around back then, but from what I've seen, the Jaguar version is a bit too hard. I don't know, honestly, it looks pretty shitty to me. From what I messed with, I didn't like it all. Fever Pitch Soccer was 10 times better, but the people seem to like it, so I'll guess I'll at least give it a 5 out of 10, I guess. Iron Soldier. When it comes to Jaguar games that deserve some more recognition, a lot of people agree that the Iron Soldier series has a lot to offer. I was very well about to go into this with the same thought process as Doom, where it was not my style, but this was a fun experience. I came out for playing this game fairly impressed with what it had to offer. Iron Soldier is a 3D mech simulation game where you fight other mechs and finish missions to progress to the next level. These missions can consist of escorting vehicles and fighting other mechs. When you start out, you have only a weak Gatling gun, but as you progress, you equip stronger and more unique weapons. This looks pretty good for 1994. You can destroy anything around you, whether that's buildings or trees or fucking whatever you want. It's definitely not the most intense game out there and pretty bare bones when you take a full look at it, but it is still a really fun time. A more sandbox type of game, this is definitely a title to look out for if you wanted to see what the Jaguar had to offer. A little Jaguar fun fact, there was an online modem in the works for the system, sort of like the X-Band that was used for the SNES and the Genesis, but entirely for the Jaguar. Club Drive, Doom, and Iron Soldier were the first games announced to be able to work with this feature. Iron Soldier in particular could use it for 2-player action, which is pretty cool. Sadly, it was never finished, so it was just released as a single-player game. Iron Soldier 2. In the same vein as Mario Galaxy 2, Iron Soldier 2 is just a more improved DLC of the original. All the ideas of the first one are here with better gameplay and sound. This game also has the distinction for being on the original Jaguar and the Jaguar CD, so if you for some reason have the add-on, the option's there. Generally a better experience than the original. If you like the first one, then the second one will be right up your alley. There is a third game in the series made for the PS1 and the Nuon of all things, but sadly that one wasn't received well, albeit I haven't played it, so take that with a grain of salt. Iron Soldier is enjoyable to the fullest degree, and if you like old school mech type games like Gun Griffin, give it a shot. I don't think it will disappoint. Same with the original, of course, this one's just slightly better. Kasumi Ninja. One of the most infamous games on the Jaguar, Kasumi Ninja is a blatant ripoff of Mortal Kombat. You have a small cast of characters with all that 90s weird representation you'd come to know, like ninjas and Scottish people. Really though, a lot of the hate for the game is valid. It's fairly slow, unfair, and to do any special moves, you have to hold down the C button and then input a command, not the other way around. So for example, to shoot a Hadouken in Street Fighter, it's a quarter circle forward and a punch button. In Kasumi Ninja, it would be hold down the C button and then do a quarter circle. It's really not intuitive to do it this way, especially nowadays where the staple of fighting game moves are more ingrained in our heads than ever. But as you play, it's not as bad as you'd think. I mean, most of the time you're just going to be spamming it anyways. The fatalities in Kasumi Ninja are actually pretty good. There's one where you just curb stomp them, one where you fucking scalp someone, holy shit. And my favorite, one where you beat the fuck out of them so their neck gets loosened up, you kick their head off and just headbutt the head? Okay. It's a bad game for sure, but I mean, it's Kasumi Ninja. Out of every bad Jaguar game, this one is definitely the one I think about the most. For $25, yeah, it's definitely worth it. If you have friends that are also into retro video games, I would be hard pressed to believe they wouldn't at least have fun with it. It also comes with a headband that's so fucking cool. You could jingle some keys in my face and say they are Atari Jaguar keys, and I'd probably say that's fucking cool. It gets an extra point for the headband. Fuck you. Missile Command 3D. Not donning the moniker of the 2000 series, Missile Command 3D is another take on an arcade classic. This time, Missile Command. You have 3 modes to choose from: Original, 3D, and Virtual. Original is what you'd expect. It's just Missile Command. It feels about as good as the original did, but this time a little stiff thanks to the controller. I have nothing to note here. You can zoom in and out with the D-pad though, so you know, that's immersion. 3D is the revamped version of Missile Command. It's also just okay, if not a bit boring. You do get some power-ups and better items sometimes, but it's still just Missile Command. Most of the time, I'll just look at the bottom screen as it displays the layout and enemies better, so that kinda sucks. But okay, this is the good shit. Virtual. You take control of a few towers and gun down enemies. After a bit of defending, you then go up against a boss. It's very basic in premise, but is a lot of fun. Where you need to place certain moves like the bomb, for example, is one of the only few issues I have. The perception in which you need to explode them is pretty rough to guess. They don't auto-detonate like in the original, you gotta do it yourself. In place of normal missiles, you have a laser, and this laser is super clean. 2 frames, boop, dead, it's great. The bosses are pretty annoying, but nothing awful. It's fun, and really the only reason to have this game in your collection. Also, I believe the only game in the entire Jaguar library that has any inkling of the fabled VR headset, so another neat thing going for it. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Bring it in, everyone. Did you know I don't like sports games, but I do make an exception to NBA Jam. I absolutely love this game, and even if it was on the Gamecom or something, I'd probably fuck with it. It has a lot of charm and personality that makes it still talked about today. With sequels and ports with varying success, I'm happy to say that the Jaguar version is very faithful to the style of the original arcade game. The music isn't the best, but that is my biggest gripe with this version. Just like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the 3DO was the definitive home version of that game for a long time, NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the Jaguar was a definitive version of this game at home for quite a while. The closest one to it was the 32X version, which is also good, but this one beats it by just a hair in my opinion. Responsive, fun, and you can play it with 4 people thanks to the Jaguar Team Tap. NBA Jam is also known for its crazy codes you can input to do stupid shit. The Jaguar version has a 32X mode and a Sega CD mode just to fucking bash Sega. I'd be hard pressed to say that NBA Jam is probably in the top 3 best games on the Jaguar. Easily the best multiplayer game on the Jaguar. Definitely give this one a go if you like the arcade game. Pinball Fantasies. Pinball Fantasies is your run-of-the-mill pinball game. It was released first on the Amiga line of computers to great success. The Jaguar version, although okay, wasn't a home run for pinball enthusiasts at the time. It's not bad, but nothing really to note. You got 4 stages to choose from: Partyland, Speed Devils, Billion Dollar Game Show, and Stones and Bones. Gotta say, I fucking love this background. It's super cute with all the colors. I don't hear many people talk about this one specifically, so time for my few brain cells to kick in. The actual pinball physics aren't up to par to what I would say is a fun pinball experience. They're not bad, but you can tell there are some major flaws. But who cares? It's a 90s pinball game. If you expected one-to-one conversion of an actual machine or the Amiga title, then you're dumb. Shame on you. Consensus kind of agrees with my assumption of this game. The actual pinball areas are cute, lots to do, but after about an hour, or even less than that, it gets pretty boring. Not a bad romp, but there is definitely a better pinball game on the Jaguar that we'll get to later. Pitfall: The Mine Adventures. Okay, in all seriousness, this is definitely not a great game. I know there are a lot of people who enjoyed this title since it was on everything, but the Jaguar version is just a port of the Super Nintendo one, almost down to the pixels. It looks fine of course, but this is one of the few games where I will agree that why would you even get it for this system unless you're a collector? Your dad, the original Pitfall man, gets kidnapped and it's up to you to go rescue him. Something about this game just rubs me the wrong way. The way Pitfall Harry II moves, the nasty colors all around, I don't know. It's like with Tarzan, I guess. I just can't get over how everything looks. If you played this game as a kid and now all you have is a Jaguar for some reason, sure, why not? Go get it. But other than that, I'd probably just say no. Power Drive Rally. Overhead racers are a bit of a novelty for me. I love games like Super Off-Road, especially the arcade version. Something about that wheel, man, you can just go crazy with it. I've redone this review a few times, and each time I get to this game in particular, my opinions on it get better and better. I slowly understand more, and after I'd say a few times popping it in, it's probably one of the best games on the system. A sequel to Power Drive, Rally improves on pretty much everything, with added touches like an announcer and better environments. If you are one of the few that have actually played the original, I can guarantee that the Jaguar exclusive sequel will beat all of your expectations and then some. After finishing a week of doing races and training, you can spend the money you earned on better cars, but that's pretty much it on the customization portion, so that's fairly lacking. The only other thing you can spend money on is repairs for your car, so I do wish there was a bit more you could manage, but at the end of the day, most of the vehicles you choose feel the same, maybe slightly different. I 100% say give this one a shot, an exclusive title that deserves to be ported today. Raiden. An absolute classic in the shmup genre, Raiden is a port of the classic 1990s title. Although coming out fairly late, it's faithful besides some music changes, I believe. I haven't played the arcade version, I'll be real. More down to earth, the power-ups feel pretty boring compared to shmups of today, but it's a fine experience. You got 2-player action and I don't have much else to say on it. I'm a ride or die kind of guy for the gold standard of shmups, Darius, so this slower gameplay and no branching paths don't really do much for me. It's fine though. Personal preference aside, nothing about Raiden felt wrong. Everything works as expected, and an absolute breath of fresh air for the Jaguar lineup of games. If you like shmups in this series, you can't go wrong with it. Rayman. That's right, this fucking monster was also on the Jaguar. Being also released for the Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1, this one is obviously a bit more limited thanks to the lacking cartridge space. This accumulates to the soundtrack sounding a bit more muffled and some levels actually being completely different. Other than that, this is a great port, and although for the time, the aforementioned distinctions might have been a negative, now with all the differences, this makes the Jaguar version the most unique of the original. And if you like Rayman, this might just be a must-have. I heard before that the controls are less responsive in the Jaguar version, but I didn't have that issue myself. This is a good example on what the system could do. It really did have some oomph when it came to 2D styles of games, but sadly, 3D was a big thing in the early to mid 90s, so Rayman stands as one of the few great examples. Ruiner Pinball, the other pinball game for the Jaguar. I'd say this is a more enjoyable experience than Pinball Fantasies. Although the physics are just as off and the bumpers have the same flaws, there's a lot more personality in Ruiner than Fantasies. You have 2 tables instead of 4 this time, but quality over quantity. These two, Ruiner and Tower, have so much more personality than the 4 previously talked about. Each table has 2 parts to it, so I guess technically it is 4 tables. When you hit certain special parts, crazy shit can happen, like bombs falling to give your pinball a bit more momentum to fucking bats or something getting in your way. The camera is so dynamic, and it really gives you the idea that your pinball is going so fast and can bust through your wall with how much momentum it's trying to show. With Pinball Fantasies, I didn't see a reason to play through each table again. They all had the same generic ideas, while with Ruiner Pinball, I was curious to see what else could happen, and I think for these older pinball games, that's one of the biggest draws. Definitely, if you like these types of games, give this one a shot. Super Burnout. God damn, is this game fucking nice to look at. The sense of speed is out of this world, and once again, the Jaguar is showing its chops. Definitely taking heavy inspirations from Sega's hit Super Hang-On, Burnout wears that on its sleeve with pride. A simple racer at its core, you have a small but nice selection of bikes to choose from, and maps ranging from some American city outskirts to cherry blossom-filled areas in Japan. The music is in your face, the controls are top-notch. It's such a shame that at the time this game was considered very middle of the road. It's even got a 2-player mode, so grab your friends and force them to play some Jaguar. This one is definitely a title that could change their mind on if the system was bad or not. Supercross 3D. From one of the best games to the worst, with Super Burnout being an amazing example of how the Jaguar can handle 2D games well, Supercross 3D is an amazing example on how abysmal the Jaguar could be with 3D titles. A sluggish, shitty experience through and through. You pick a racer, change their name and nationality, and then race through some of the most mind-boggling bland racetracks I've ever seen in a video game. With frame rate that rivals playing a PS5 game on the PS1, you have absolutely no need to try this one out other than to groan at probably one of the worst games of all time. It's so bad, your eyes start to adjust to its horrible frame rate, and the minute you play anything else, it'll feel super fast in comparison. It infects you. Absolutely the worst game on the Jaguar, no contest. Syndicate. For all you RTS fans out there, the original Syndicate on the Jaguar is a great faithful port of the classic PC game. Although not something I enjoy fully as a genre, this plays fine. Without the mouse, this does feel a bit slower, but they did a fantastic job porting this onto the system. For the time, this was really the best way to play Syndicate if you didn't have a computer. Not something that is a big need today, as this game's definitely been ported over to better things now, but a great example nonetheless. Tempest 2000. Here it is, one of the best Jaguar games ever made. Tempest 2000 is an absolute must-have for the system, no contest. It has been ported over to other systems after the failure of the Jaguar, such as the Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, and even MS-DOS. It's still a very enjoyable title. From the addicting gameplay to the music that was so good they included it as a music CD for the Jaguar CD, to the wonderful vector-esque graphics, you cannot go wrong with this absolute banger. Alistair Lindsay, Ian Howe, and Kevin Seville made one of my favorite soundtracks ever. I cannot express into words how much I like this game. It was so wildly loved that in some magazines they put it in the top 100s list in the mid-90s. And once again, a sequel was made for the new one called Tempest 3000, and another game, Tempest 4000, has been recently made on the PS4, Xbox One, PC, Switch, and even the Atari VCS, so even if you can't play this version, definitely give one of them a shot. Theme Park. A port of the well-received simulation game, the Jaguar version is everything that you would want it to be if you were a theme park fan with the MS-DOS version. I, on the other hand, am not a big fan of this genre. I liked Roller Coaster Tycoon and that's it. Theme Park felt pretty scrambled together when trying to put stuff down, at least for the Jaguar title that is. Nothing stuck with me when laying down new attractions, and the pathing for your walkways felt super strange. This could definitely be a skill issue, and if I put more time into this, I might come to enjoy it. At the moment, the confusing control scheme is what marks it down for me. And also you can't save, and with these kinds of games, that's almost a necessity. Towers 2. Easily one of the most unique examples on the Jaguar, Towers 2 is the sequel to Towers 1 for the Atari ST and Game Boy. A first-person RPG with a medieval aesthetic, you go through Dagon's Tower collecting items along the way and doing side quests. Having the distinction of being the only RPG on the Jaguar, I'm happy to say that Towers 2 is pretty good. The gameplay is a bit slow, but you can easily get used to it. It's not like Supercross 3D or anything. You can pick up spells and items that range from healing to dealing damage to enemies. Apparently there are 11 floors to explore, but I got to around 5 before calling it quits. With a lot of these kinds of games, especially back then, there's a lot of backtracking that has to be done to progress farther, which I'm okay with doing if there's stuff to do on the way, but that's usually not the case. To interact with objects, there's a little drop-down menu that gets the job done at the very least. Later on, this game did have a port for Windows, so there are easier ways to play Towers 2 than grabbing a Jaguar or ST. I think it's worth it. Weirdly enough, the release for this game, probably because it was coming out well after the Jaguar had any staying power left, was only available through direct order and some random game stores. An interesting experience of a title that I can comfortably say warrants it being an underrated gem for the system. Trevor McFur in Crescent Galaxy, the other launch title for the Jaguar being made in conjunction with Cybermore for the ill-fated Atari Panther. It's a run-of-the-mill shmup with generic controls and no music besides on the title screen. The challenge that this game provides is more so from boredom than from gameplay. Music makes or breaks some titles, and this is definitely one that would have benefited from some bleeps and bloops for real. Each button on the number pad corresponds with the power-up you can find across the level, and each one does something different, so there's variety in how you play the game, but it equally feels a bit much with having 9 different attacks, so instead of planning out the best time to clear the screen or get help, it more so feels like a spray and pray. Not shown here sadly because I couldn't get some wacky cute Jaguar cheats working, are the final bosses for each world, which range from spaceships to abominations straight out of H.R. Geiger's portfolio. Some of these designs are really neat, and I'd say is one of the cooler things to show when talking about Trevor McFur. All in all, it's your run-of-the-mill side-scrolling shooter, if not a little less so for how mediocre it is. Troy Aikman football. Hell yeah. Ultra Vortek, the bona fide best fighting game on the Jaguar. Ultra Vortek is once again a Mortal Kombat clone. Although the competition for best fighting game on the Jaguar is lacking considering there are only 5 games that fit that genre, Ultra Vortek still has some neat stuff to offer. The playable characters give off that cheesy 90s charm with some sprinkled sprite-based characters that just absolutely don't fit in any scenario. You got the typical signature moves to fatalities with charm spewing everywhere. You can tell beyond games the people who made this game really liked what they were doing. They even added some cheeky codes to sort of make fun of fatalities called poopalities, which will just turn your opponent into a log of shit. The gameplay is a bit slow, but compared to any other fighting game for the Jaguar, this is Fighter Z levels of speed. The inputs feel correct for the most part, and the music isn't absolutely shit for once. I say definitely give this one a go, at least for the poopality. I mean, come on, what a fuck you idea. Valdesari Skiing and Snowboarding, a conversion of the Super Nintendo game Tommy Moe's Winter Extreme Skiing and Snowboarding, Jesus Christ, long names all around, is a pretty competent arcade-style sports game. Comparing this to the previous SNES version, from the graphics to the scaling of the sprites, they all look marginally better. The music is definitely more in your face, and the branching paths help keep the game fresh for a few extra playthroughs. The speed in which you can go, downhill is a bit much at times, but for the era of games that really push speed as the coolest thing with the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog, I'd say it gets the job done. Even if some things are unavoidable because of the speed, like pedestrians walking across your path or rocks in your way that form a makeshift road for you to cross. You have 2 versions of play, as the title suggests, either snowboarding or skiing. Personally, I think the snowboarding was a bit more fun, but the differences between the two were minute to almost non-existent. So it's just what you think is cooler, I suppose. Give this one a go if you want a challenging and speedy experience. Definitely a Jaguar game that deserves to be looked at again. White Men Can't Jump. Whoo boy. As I said earlier, Supercross 3D is the worst game on the Jaguar, but White Man Can't Jump is a pretty close contender for that coveted title. Loosely based off the 1992 movie, you control notable characters like Wisp, Freaky, and Eggman. If you ever played Arch Rivals, another sports game, you have a pretty good example of what White Men Can't Jump has to offer. You can punch your opponents to get the ball, shoot 3-pointers, and slam dunk. What makes this game atrocious is the inconsistent frame rate, the constant voice clips being spewed out every 5 seconds, and the absolute worst color schemes I have seen in a bit. I know it's going for a ghetto city feel with a smog-filled city in the background and the torn down areas, but it comes off as just boring. Even in areas where it's supposed to be beautiful, like a beach or a resort, everything just looks bland. The only real reason why this game isn't the worst is the camera movements. They're fairly unique, and the sprites aren't the worst thing I've seen, but that in no way makes this game even remotely enjoyable. I'd steer clear from this one. Wolfenstein 3D. The dad of Doom, Wolfenstein 3D needs no introduction, as my first real experience with this game being this version right here that I am playing for this review, I am going to have a hot take and say I enjoyed this way more than the Hell shooter that came out a bit later. This port's real issue, at least from what people said back then, is that it apparently goes too fast at some points, but I think that's what made it more enjoyable. I never thought I'd enjoy these types of older FPS games, especially the one that really started it all, but color me impressed. A great port that definitely has no reason to be played today, but is something that got me out of that funk of not enjoying these types of games. I've been working on this review on and off for a bit now, and thanks to this game, I even got into some of the newer Wolfenstein games, and god damn it, I love them. It has one of the best interactions I've ever seen in any media whatsoever. Look at this.
Ein verräterischer Jude! No, mein Führer. I'm from Arizona.
Worms. The last game to be released for the Atari Jaguar, the classic Amiga game is ported fairly well. If you've played Worms, you've played them all, so the notes here aren't going to be that different from any other version of this game. Only available through EB Games in direct order, in 1998, Worms was released actually a few months after Atari was bought out by Hasbro, and only a year before the Jaguar became public domain. A fine experience, nothing feels off about this version. It's just Worms, not the worst way for a system to go out, honestly. It could have been just sports games like so many others. 05. I have no idea how to explain this game. A behind-the-back shooter, you control a spaceship and try to finagle your way to shooting oncoming enemies. The learning curve for this game is pretty steep. No matter how much you try and figure out how to steer around, it never feels accurate enough, with the music just absolutely going harder than it has any right to be. There isn't a moment to spare retaining any memories from a previous playthrough. Instead of being a deterrent though, once you do a cool trick shot or land a tough maneuver, this game shines brighter than anything else on the Jaguar. An interesting experience that I will easily be coming back to in the future. After a bit, the camera will pan out, slamming you into a different mode of play that is so jarring with the perspectives feeling completely off, and once again, it doesn't feel bad? It's strange to comprehend how 05 manages to bring me back with all these weird ideas. The formula shouldn't work, and in a lot of ways, it kinda doesn't, but it's addicting, high-paced action that completely rewires your brain on how to play a shmup. Give this one a go, just for the experience. Right now, the score isn't as high as I would like it to be, but maybe one day, I'll revisit this one. Zool 2. Being released also on the Amiga, Amiga CD32, DOS, and BlackBerry? Hell yeah, the BlackBerry! Zool 2 is a competent platformer. I'm a fan of the original on the Super Nintendo, and this just feels like more of the same, but now with a new character named Zeus and different power-ups. In most levels, some parts of the stage can only be destroyed by that specific character, so replayability is also there. If you haven't played a Zool game before, the objective of the game is to collect a certain amount of items before you are allowed to progress to the next stage. It in turn is almost like a collect-a-thon, but with how many things are sprawled about each level, it feels fluid and not some tacked-on objective like with Bubsy, for example. Each stage has some gimmick that spices up progression, and sometimes you even get mini-games after you beat a stage well enough. Everything about this game is pretty good. Some negatives is that the speed you can go feels a bit much considering a few enemies are relatively small, but honestly, once you get into the zone, the gamer zone, it's not that big of a deal. If you like platformers and haven't played this one, or hell, even the original, give them a shot, seriously. Zoop, the final game of the 50 Jaguar titles. Leaving off on a pretty bland note, Zoop is a color or shape matching puzzle game made for literally everything back then. It's a fine puzzle game, if not just a bit boring. The challenge isn't something that feels progressive as each piece is placed out randomly. For games like Tetris, it works great since the synergy between all the pieces lines up and makes you think. With Zoop, it feels very congested and you just try to line up the best you can until you inevitably die. The music is nice with a smooth jazz feel, and the controls, even if liminal, are acceptable, so if you haven't played Zoop before, this is a fine version to try out. Onward to the Jaguar CD. Only 11 games were released for this thing. Let's see if it's as bad as people say. If you're liking this video, why not consider subscribing? Okay, nah, I'm just kidding. Do whatever you want. Fuck off. Baldies. a real-time strategy game that in every aspect has promise, with unique ways to deal with enemies to general aesthetic that's pleasing to look at. The intro is super cute with its claymation, and I didn't like it one bit. Real-time strategy games are not my cup of tea, but even for back then, this is considered mediocre at best, so I'll leave it at that. Battlemorph. A sequel to the Jaguar's launch title Cybermorph, Battlemorph improves on everything the original was trying to show off. Great graphics for the time, gameplay feels way smoother with the objectives being more or less the same. Wonderful little animations for starting and completing each level to even customizable weapons. It's a safe bet to say out of every Jaguar CD game, this is probably the best. Little added touches are some of my favorite things in video games. It shows care for the most part, and one of the little things that's been updated for Battlemorph compared to the original is that you can go into the water. It showcases how quickly the Jaguar CD could load in a new surrounding with a little water transition. It's a nice touch. In some spots you can go into tunnels or buildings to complete objectives or to collect special power-ups to increase your ship's power, but most of it is only there if you decide to explore your surroundings. Battlemorph is a wonderful game, and I would say is a must-have for anyone that wants a Jaguar CD for some reason. Blue Lightning. A sequel to the Lynx title with the same name, Blue Lightning is a flight simulation game sort of like Top Gun's second mission on the NES. A very sluggish title with some nice cutscenes. There's a lot missing here for me to say it's worth your time. Everything is there for a great game besides the actual gameplay itself. Your shots seem to miss a lot of the time, and your power-ups fare not much better. I'd steer clear from this one. Music's kick-ass though. Braindead 13. A Readysoft title that has a cult following with loads of ports, the Jaguar CD version of Braindead 13 feels fairly broken. Your inputs feel stunted, so you'll die randomly because who knows? Maybe my disc is dirty, or maybe loads of these FMV games on the Jaguar CD have these issues. As for Braindead 13, it's super expressive, and the animation is top notch, which is what you would expect from the company. It's fine, but man, I'd rather play it anywhere else. One neat note is that this has a demo for Dragon's Lair 2, which was never released. Dragon's Lair. Exactly the same issue as Braindead 13. Dragon's Lair's inputs seem wrong, and I can't get fucking far at all in these games. It makes no sense. I played these on the 360 and even the Wii version with no problems. I just think the Jaguar CD games are scuffed. Hardcore, man. Highlander, A Land of the MacLeods. A planned trilogy of games, but only this one came out. You're looking at Alone in the Dark, but somehow with worse controls. Every 5 steps, the camera has to load a new point of view and stunts the game down so much that just walking from point A to point B is an absolute chore. The actual controls feel so counterintuitive if you want to, let's say, attack. You can't just press a button. You have to hold it down for the duration of the animation, because if you don't, your character sort of just spazzes out. Meme of a game. I had less enjoyment from this than even like Hotel Mario. In a weird way though, just for the laughs, I'd say give it a bit of your time. It has nothing going for it, but that's sort of what it does have going for it. Garbage, but so stupid that you can't help but kinda like it. What? Yep. Almost there. You got it. Do it again. Maybe if you're lucky. Nope. Alright, they didn't have to animate that. You could have just said it was locked. You could have just said it was locked, game. You could have just said, please stop loading and cut, like, okay. Okay, you can't go, okay, he's just gonna do it again. Alright, I can't skip this. Hover Strike, Unconquered Lands. Weird to say this, but a remake of Hover Strike on the Jaguar. Unconquered Lands offers smoother gameplay, better controls, and music, with of course new enemies and stages. If you like the original, this will be a must-have. One of my biggest complaints for the original was the frame rate drops, and even though it is still present at times, this is definitely an improvement and a marginally better experience. Of course, it's still not amazing, but if you wanted to play Hover Strike, this would be the version I would personally recommend. Iron Soldier 2. Being released at the same time as the cartridge version, everything I stated before stands true with the CD alternative. Everything is the exact same, so I'll be giving it the same score. Myst. The famous love it or hate it point-and-click adventure game even had a port on the Jaguar CD. Besides the why involved in this coming over, if you played Myst, this should be the same experience. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this series, but I have played it on the Sega Saturn as well, and I gotta say, the Jaguar CD version stands out as a better experience, weirdly enough. The load times were faster, the cursor speed I think felt snappier, and even the FMVs loaded quicker. Weird for the Jaguar to have a full-on win against the Saturn in any way, but here we are. Bundled with the Jaguar CD was a Myst demo as well, so they were really trying to push this game during its height. It's Myst though, so, you know, sorry. Primal Rage. The hit arcade game from 1994 made by Atari obviously would make an appearance somewhere on their system. The Jaguar CD port is pretty good and loads better than most other options at the time. The controls feel very what you'd expect of this game. Personal opinions aside, this is a fine port and showcases the Jaguar CD fondly. Now for actual opinions, I'm not a huge fan of it. I can never land things correctly, and most of the times I just try to cheese, but the CPU is actually decent for this game, so it never works. Fine port, and okay at best fighting game. Space Ace. Please just let it in now. Same issues as Dragon's Lair and Brain Dead 13, although I'll say Space Ace is my favorite of these types of games. Just sucks I can't even play it. God damn it. I really hope this is just a me issue and not a blatant issue of the Jaguar CD. For now, it gets the same rating as the other two. If this is actually the Jaguar CD's fault, congrats, we actually have the worst games, just because I can't even control things correctly. VidGrid. A showcase for the Jaguar CD's FMV capabilities, VidGrid originally was a Windows exclusive, but for the era of FMVs reigning supreme, was a great choice to show off what the add-on could do. It's a mix and match style game with music videos that were popular for the time, playing as your puzzle pieces. It's fine, if not just a bit bland. You can change the difficulty, but that's about the extent of replayability, besides listening to some good jams. Some neat notes is that High Voltage Software wanted to add some new features to make the game stand out from its PC counterpart, but Atari shot it down with wanting to keep it faithful to the original. Which for then, sure, that's cool I guess, but now I feel it to be kinda lazy. What faithfulness would you need for a Jigsaw music video game? Either way, it's okay, I guess. A pack-in title, so sure, why not? It does the job busting out the Jaguar CD's FMV chops. World Tour Racing, the final licensed Jaguar game. And it's kind of a neat one. World Tour Racing was almost the last released game for the Jaguar CD before Iron Soldier 2 took that title. What makes the game shine is its absolute kick-ass soundtrack and lovingly creepy cutscenes. With not just a normal race, you also have an arcade and championship mode. If you dig a little deeper, there's even a stage creation tool, which is about as clunky as you'd expect. The music slaps your face, wanting to scream at you to go fast and win the race, but the gameplay doesn't match the feelings the soundtrack brings. It's a frame rate nightmare, but you do get used to it over time. The cutscenes have so much charm and gives me bowling alley animation vibes, which is a wonderful sight to behold, as this was the final Jaguar game from the original 61 I had to play. My favorite definitely is the Jaguar arcade machine busting through the wall during championship mode. If anything, this game made me want to mess around with it more so than actually play the thing. I loved the added touches here and there. It just sucks the game isn't that much to look at once you peel over this superficial layer. The Atari Jaguar CD isn't a cheap piece of old technology nowadays, and I sorta wish I could give most of these games a better look-see, but as you can obviously tell, there isn't much here. The notable few like Highlander, Hover Strike, and Battle Morph definitely are the must-haves, but after that, well, I'd say the best thing about it is the VLM. That is definitely the star of the show. You pop this out at a house party and everyone will probably leave, but I'd stay. Now with all the games covered, it's time for the final two pieces to finish everything up, and this is gonna be super convoluted. First up, let's talk about the prototypes and titles that never got to be released. Note that some footage won't look great as the only footage is from years ago when these games were still being made. So let's cut this into prototypes that are readily available online to then talk about the games that never came to be and will have like just garbage footage. Quick rounds, let's do it. I'm not a prototype showcase YouTuber, so these are going to be fucking off the cuff, I'm sorry. Atari carts. From varying degrees of changes, the actual meat of this game stayed relatively the same, besides the background missing a few missing stages and the camera movements being slightly different. You have an almost identical game from what I played earlier. There's not much else to see here, probably showroom demo or something, who knows. Alien vs Predator. Now this is a prototype. Characters motionless when you stare at them like they are petrified of you. The shotgun looking like a shotgun you'd see it at a Walmart near you. Fuck, even the Predator is showing how to do it to him. This is fantastic. Weirdly enough, it's finished to a point to give the atmosphere that creepy vibe that the original is known for. So they definitely had something even back then. It's still a buggy mess, but super fascinating to look at. The enemies will only chase you once you turn around, which actually is a point more horrifying than what the original has to offer. It's a neat look at one of the best Jaguar games before it was finished. What more is there to say? Cybermorph. I enjoyed the little prototype from Aliens vs Predators since they actually somehow made it creepy even with it being that early in development, but Cybermorph is creepy for all the wrong reasons. It's not trying to be. The landscapes are even more bland and there's almost nothing around besides flickering models most of the time. Once you beat a stage, you get some woman that says nothing and that's it. That's the entire prototype. Something about it just rubs me the wrong way. It's almost dread-filling. You could easily slap on some creepy filters and say it's personalized or something. Fight for Life. Completely different from the one that was released later. It's almost better in a way. The controls are about as stiff compared to the final version, but everything has a weight to it now. The jumping feels more natural and the character models even look kinda better. They completely reworked how this game played and looked, and somehow made it worse? They slowed down the gameplay and controls later on for some reason, which makes no sense. I think this is a better experience than the actual licensed released game. Play this version, seriously. It's not as polished, but it's a hell of a lot more fun. Kasumi Ninja. Around 6 months before release, Kasumi Ninja apparently was barely a game. You have 2 Senzos or Habakis duke it out on one stage, and that's about it. You can try to play other characters, but for me, this version kept crashing, so I didn't want to try that hard. It played pretty much exactly the same. The biggest note here was the character select screen was wildly different. Now for the games that never came to be. For the ones that have been found and dumped, then to the ones that have footage but have still not been found. Arena Football 95. Some sort of football game, I guess. Trying to get released in 1994, the Jaguar was already doing pretty bad by then, so it just got canned. After Hasbro made everything public domain, though, in 2006, it came back in a small limited run, which is kinda neat. The game is definitely nothing to look at in terms of gameplay and presentation. The crowd looks like prosciutto, it's very ugly. I can't hate on it though since it did never come out, but if Troy Aikman is a good representation of what generic sports games were gonna be like on the Jaguar, then maybe it's a good thing Arena Football 95 didn't see the light of day. Also was shown on the Jaguar Systems box? Holy shit, that sucks. Brett Hull Hockey. A hockey game that was released for the Super Nintendo but was canned for everything else. The Jaguar, Jaguar CD, and Sega Genesis was gonna have their own versions as well, but that never came to be. Same with Arena Football, this was planned for a late 94 date but got canned and saw it being sold a few years later after the Jaguar became public domain. Comparing Brett Hull hockey versions, the Jaguar variant boasts better graphics and more details from the actual rink to the crowds. The gameplay is your typical ice hockey game from the 90s though. It's serviceable and I'd say pretty close to finished. Shame it never came out honestly. There is a second earlier build of this game, but boy is it rough. A lot slower, everything is darker and looks dirty. The controls are stiff, but it's earlier than the last release, so the improvements they made easily show. Jack Nicklaus Cybergolf. Cybergolf also has the cool distinction of having 2 different prototypes available for the people. The first one, a demo to showcase how the game would look. The FMV doesn't look too bad and the overall presentation is decent. I just wish it was more than just a demo and actual gameplay. No matter what you select, the results for your one course is the same, so pretty whatever as a game. Still cool to see. The music is great. It reminds you of some sort of VHS educational tape or something. The other version, just being called Cybergolf, is a parameter test to see how high and how fast the golf ball will be going. It's boring to see, but I mean, come on, ball go up, ball go down. Tiny Toons Adventures, Plucky Duck, and Hollywood Hijinks. I would assume platformer that was canned since the Jaguar failed. From what I played and when it wasn't crashing, the presentation looks pretty good. Everything is vibrant and nothing stands out. Tiny Toons has had some great games on other systems, and obviously I don't know if this was gonna be up there with the likes of Buster's Bust Loose or Adventures on the Nintendo or Tiny Toons Acme All-Stars on the Genesis, but from the little I got to try out and see, who knows, maybe. Ultimate Brain Games. Aw shit, finally those little inserts that say this game is coming soon finally came true. Ultimate Brain Games is a board game collection that controls like hell. This is more so fun just because I can actually try these never released games out to scratch that weird itch I have. I know how to play chess, seriously, but the controls don't feel right. Probably an issue with the game, who knows, but even then, it's super ugly. Off topic, but if you want a great chess game from back then, chef's choice here, play Battle Chess, seriously. Finally, before we get to the stuff that has not been found yet, a few games have been tweaked or are so finished compared to these prototypes that I think they deserve a special section. Battlesphere Gold. A space combat shooter with impressive visuals and controls, Battlesphere Gold is a more finished version of the original unreleased game. Receiving great praise during the time, this game is one of the best I've seen visually for the Jaguar. You have a momentum-based mechanic with how you fly, which took me a second to get used to, but once you understand the controls, it's a blast to play. I have no friends, but multiplayer seems pretty great too. I will say the expanse of space takes a while to get around, but I didn't play this one for long, and this is all just first impressions really. Probably would have done fantastic if it was released during the same time as like Aliens vs Predator. Phase Zero. Hover Strike if it was actually really good. Phase Zero has explodable land, great controls, wonderful layouts, and so much more to offer. A genuinely fun game, and even though it did not come out, easily shows off what the Jaguar was capable of if given the right treatment. You can only play 5 stages, but can access more with cheats. The company was still working on this even after Atari cut funding. You can tell they were very passionate about Phase Zero. A wonderful experience, definitely give this one a go. Protector Special Edition. This was bundled with my Atari Jaguar when I got it, with a couple other games, and it's pretty good. Made by Bethesda and released by Songbird Productions in 2002, this is based off the 1981 computer game of the same name. With tight controls, great music, and a difficulty that will keep you coming back, this is a great time. Dare I say, it could be as good, if not slightly better, than Defender 2000. Space War 2000. Based on the classic game from 1978, this one's really weird. Another space shooter. Visually, this is impressive, but nothing to really note compared to all the others. A complicated game, as each button does something different, it feels very congested. The frequent crashes don't help either. Once you beat a stage or die, you are presented with a literal godlike being, and that's it. There's something here though. It's finished enough to be played, of course, but with the right amount of polish, man, this could have been amazing for the time. I mean, that could have been said for a lot of Jaguar games, honestly, now that I think about it. Almost there to the old footage games, there were just a few games that would work for me no matter what I tried, and I've done too much for this review, so here's the list of games I could not actually try out. American Hero, Barkley Shut Up and Jam, Caves of Fear, Hyperforce, Slam Racer, Skyhammer, and Thea Realm Fighter. Which is kind of a shame, as Hyperforce and American Hero look pretty good. Maybe one day I'll do a revisit and try these out, and any more that I missed, but come on, this video is stupid long as it is. On to the games that haven't been found, but there's a few videos out there. Conan. An impressive beat 'em up. The little footage around shows big sprites and wonderful backgrounds. This is the stuff that Atari should have really pushed instead of the lackluster 3D. Some comments from people who've actually seen this footage have said that if this was actually released or things in this style, they would have gotten a Jaguar in a heartbeat. Dactyl Joust. A semi-sequel to Joust, all you have to see here is about 10 seconds of footage. It does look impressive, so impressive in fact that it's close to systems that would come out a few years later like the N64 and PS1, but this was canned fairly early in development. Looks interesting though, more detailed than some released games for the system. Deathmatch. The gold standard when it comes to games that I hope gets found one day. A platformer shooter with vibrant colors and great animations. Turns out that during the time this game was in development, Atari canned their funding because they wanted to focus on 3D instead of 2D, which, god damn it, I understand why for the time, but this looks awesome. The footage you see here was shown at E3 in 1995, which was also the same year the N64, the Saturn, and the PS1 were being showcased, which definitely didn't help it stand out. Apparently the developers said the source code is also gone too, so it doesn't look good for this one to ever be found again, but hopefully one day, please. Sphere. An unreleased puzzle game where you remove Tetris-like shapes to take off layers from a sphere. A unique experience, so unique that someone at Nintendo walked over to the Atari booth where this game was being showcased and offered a hefty sum of money for the rights. A few years later, Tetrisphere came out for the N64, so you can still at least play a version of this game today if you wanted to. Soulstar X. An unreleased update of Soulstar for the Sega CD, cancelled for the 32X and Jaguar CD. Soulstar is an alright game, so it's a safe bet that this updated version was going to be much of the same. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be much when it comes to actual tangible footage. Notable games were considered for the Jaguar and Jaguar CDs such as Earthworm Jim, Outrunners, Shinobi, Bomberman, Heart of Darkness, and even some sequels were in the works like for Alien vs Predator. Most of these prototype games at least look interesting and were really trying to push what the Jaguar could do or to show what the Jaguar and CD were capable of. Hopefully they are found one day as, man, I want to try out Conan and Deathmatch Out. The Atari Jaguar is definitely a game system that even though it failed, I wholeheartedly believe it to be misrepresented today. There's a strong, die-hard fan base that still are trying to uncover lost prototypes, making quality of life improvements, to even making their own games for the system. So why not look at some of these awesome homebrew titles to finish off this video. We will be categorizing these from what I have played to what I will definitely play in the future. Alice Mom's Rescue. A standard platformer, it controls fine and the visuals are great to look at. What makes this game interesting in most games made by Orion Soft is that they got ported to loads of different consoles. For example, Alice Mom's Rescue is on Steam, Jaguar, Android, Dreamcast, even the Atari Falcon. The novelty for this is definitely the many ways you can experience this game. Elancer. A Myst-like experience, Elancer scratched that itch a lot of people who enjoyed the classic needed, especially for the Jaguar. Once again made by Orion Soft, this one can be played on every system stated for Alice Mom's Rescue. Another system that you could do this with is the Firebeast CT60. I don't even know what that is. Here's a picture of it. Wow, that's so interesting. What is that? Frog 64. Made by Wave 1, Frog 64 is a clone of Frogger, obviously. The controls are very stiff, certain areas seem broken, and will sometimes kill you, and sometimes won't. It's not the best experience on the Jaguar. I can't do any better personally, so I won't dog it too much, but the fact someone made this, hey, kudos to them. Jagtris. One of the classics, one of the first ever homebrew games, Jagtris would be absolutely fantastic to play, but its controls feel very off. With a little bit of polish, I would actually come back to this one from time to time. That's all the games I've tried so far, please. Now for the games I haven't gotten a chance to try out yet, but look awesome. Asterite. One of the more recent homebrew games, a Metroidvania-styled game with over 100 rooms and 30 plus enemies. It looks amazing and definitely on my list. It was just released not too long ago, and you can get it now on Songbird Productions' website. I'll leave their link in the description, I guess. Superfly DX. In a Voidum arcade-style game, Superfly DX provides addicting fast gameplay with computer-generated layouts and 4 worlds to explore to try and rescue your girlfriend. Made over 12 years ago, people still bring it up from time to time. Apparently there's even some sort of controller for it, I think. That's sick, look at that. Rebooteroids. Asteroids but on crack. Been in the making for around 5 years, this is so close to something I would see on the Jaguar back when it was still on the market. I have played my fair share of Asteroids on the 2600, so I bet this would feel right at home with my collection. Gravitic Mines. A lunar lander styled game sort of like Gravitar. It's another new release. Gravitic Mines looks fun and addicting. Jag Zombies 2. There definitely needs to be more horror games on the Jaguar, and although Jag Zombies 2 doesn't look the best, who knows? I like zombies, so I'll probably grab this at some point. There's so much more I haven't even brought up for Jaguar Homebrew. I just don't want to fit any more in this video. If you are looking for a reputable source for Jaguar games, look up Atari Age and Songbird Productions. Both of them have been around for decades now. So, there it is, every single Jaguar game that's been released and a few things here and there. The public likes to bash this system for being just a piece of shit that couldn't churn out some great titles. I think a good portion of that goes into the fact that the marketing really pandered to its 3D capabilities rather than what it was really strong at, which were the 2D games. Even so, A good portion of the library is serviceable to even pretty good. The fans of the system have been fans for years, and I like to think for a good reason. It had, and still has, a lot of promise. Even today, the homebrew games are getting better and better. People are porting over different games onto the Jaguar from the Atari ST line, and gradually over time, I've seen opinions shift to a more positive, neutral outlook on the system. Personal opinions, I would say the Jaguar isn't the best thing back then, far from it, but it stands as something that could have been looked at more fondly if Atari wasn't trying to look so cutting edge. I like it, simple as that. I cannot wait to see what people will make for the Jaguar in the future. Once again, special thanks to Clint Thompson for the help on the Jaguar VR stuff. Without that, my brain wouldn't allow me to finish this review because I would always feel like I left something out and this would have been on the back burner for actual years. If you want to check his Discord out, there will be a link down below. And if you want to check out how to make your own Jaguar games, there will be a link as well. He didn't specify if he wanted his YouTube down there, but I'll add it anyways because he was such a great help. All the art you have seen has been made by @PastelBunnyBab on Twitter. They make great stuff. They smell really bad though. Go check them out for some good old art. You can even get commissions whenever you want pretty much. It's nice to be back again after the 100th time saying that, but this video has taken me a bit to do. Thank you for watching. I stream on Twitch almost every day pretty much. Come check me out if you want. Sorry for the shill. I hate him as much as you two. Subscribe to me. I'm gonna shill out now. Subscribe, guys. It's twitch.tv/GurgatGames, by the way. Let's pray that the next video won't be in like 500 years. See you guys next time.